So you're thinking about moving to the Oregon coast and you're wondering what the weather is like. You've probably heard, whether it be from friends or just in the news and the media or just through the grapevine, that in Oregon, it rains a lot. And I hate to break it to you, that happens to be true. The Oregon coast is absolutely no exception. In fact, the Oregon coast gets almost twice the amount of rain in terms of inches than the rest of Western Oregon in terms of Portland, Salem, areas like that. So if you're considering moving to the Oregon coast, buying a home there, and the weather is something that is potentially a deterrent, in this video, we're going to talk about exactly what to expect in terms of weather, how that might affect your day-to-day life, and hopefully this will give you a little bit more insight into what the weather is like and if it's something that you can stand. So stay tuned. What's up, everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from the Oregon coast. And if this is your first time to the channel and you want to learn everything there is to know about what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, play, and the pros and cons of living at the Oregon coast, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that little bell to make sure that you're notified every time we drop a new video. And we're getting people calling us, emailing us, texting us, people who are moving here to the Oregon coast, buying a vacation home or relocating full time. And we love to hear from you. So if you're thinking about buying a house at the Oregon coast, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or even schedule a Zoom call in the description below. However you decide to get a hold of us, we have your back when it comes to moving to the Oregon coast. So probably the biggest question mark for people who are considering buying an Oregon coast property is what the weather is like. And, you know, it's really no secret that, you know, in Oregon, in the Northwest, in this part of the country, it rains a lot. But, you know, if you are thinking about buying a house at the Oregon coast, you've probably been there, or you probably, at the very least, already have an understanding of, you know, what the weather might be like to some extent. But certainly if you're somebody who, you know, likes more sunshine or is affected by, you know, more kind of clouds and overcast and rain and fog and some of the gloomier weather that the Oregon coast typically has throughout the year, you know, you really might want to consider, you know, how that might factor into your overall experience before actually taking the next steps into making a purchase. Now, kind of on the other end of that perspective or that conversation is, you know, the weather itself is one of the biggest attractions to the Oregon coast. And, you know, that might seem a little counterintuitive. You know, it's not all sunshine. These aren't California beaches. But, you know, the weather itself and just the climate is part of the experience overall. And, you know, one of the top kind of descriptors or adjectives that I hear for people describing the Oregon coast is that the weather is moody. And so on one hand, you know, there are people out there who, you know, legitimately have, you know, something called seasonal affective disorder, you know, where the weather can actually impact their mood and everything. And so, you know, folks with that sort of condition, you know, probably are looking to get into places or relocate to places where there's more sunshine, you know, get more vitamin D and all of that. But you get this really dramatic climate at the Oregon coast where there can be high winds at times. You get a lot of rain and mist throughout the year. In particular, from about October through May, you can pretty well count on most days having some moisture in the air, either having significant rainfall or, you know, there seems to always be a little bit of that kind of mist in the air, which is really pleasant from my perspective. I love the Oregon coast. I love the weather there. There's something about it that it's just, it may be a little bit hard to put my finger on as far as exactly how to describe it, but there's really no place like it from my perspective. And it's really refreshing. I mean, just, the fresh air, kind of that coastal sea air, and that coastal mist that comes along with that. There's something that is really refreshing about it. And again, it is actually one of the things that tends to draw people to the area, as opposed to, having people seeking other places. So if we think about Oregon as a whole, there are a number of outdoor activities and things that people like to engage in. And of course, the Oregon coast is no exception to that. You have kayaking, hiking, you have boating, you have fishing, you have surfing, kites, you have the wildlife, and looking for rocks and shells and sea life on the beaches, and so much more that you can do and explore, and really get outdoors and experience those things. Now, there are times throughout the year where, the temperature drops, it's going to be pretty wet, it's going to be pretty rainy. And, that doesn't necessarily stop that many people from getting out and doing those things. But however, there's a ton of activities and things that you can do indoors as well at the Oregon coast. I mean, everything from aquariums to museums to art galleries to great restaurants, breweries, wineries, wine tasting rooms. There's even caves up and down the Oregon coast where, that's kind of an indoor-outdoor activity, but at least you have a little bit of shelter and you can still get out and do some of that exploring, and not be, underneath the rainfall the whole time. Different shops, antiques, really there's all kinds of things that you can do up and down the Oregon coast that don't require you to be outdoors the whole time. And part of that might just be sitting in your living room, or a room in your house, kitchen, breakfast nook, whatever it may be, and just taking in the views. Even if you're not set directly on the beach, really most places in terms of, where you might be, you can kind of get a window or a peek at least the horizon over the beach and out over the ocean. But, there are mountains, there's trees, there's rivers, there's lakes, there's all kinds of things to see just looking out your window. So, you really don't even have to step foot out your door to get that Oregon coast experience. And again, we're not talking about spending, all day, every day outdoors. Now, if we start kind of breaking this down seasonally, again, it's no secret that the Oregon coast is cool and wet. And, that's just something that you're going to get. But if you're looking at kind of the peak season in particular for tourism, you're really looking at that June through September time, where you're going to start getting a majority dry days. You're going to start getting, low to mid 60s on average. And you're going to start seeing some days that do creep up into the 70s, even 80s. When the rest of Oregon is experiencing a heat wave, it might be 100 degrees in the valley in Portland. It might shoot up to 85, high 80s out on the coast. And, you really can't beat that. But, that's not to say that is something that's going to happen a lot over the course of the summer, but you're going to get a few days where it's going to get pretty toasty. So either way, regardless, I mean, if you're looking for sunshine and warm weather, you're definitely going to get that, but it's going to be a pretty small sliver of the year, and really just kind of looking at primarily those summer months. But moving into the fall, you start to see temperatures drop overnight and in the morning quite a bit. So it's going to be kind of cooler and crisper, but you'll still see some days that are going to be maybe high 50s, low 60s. You'll get some sunshine creeping through, and you can actually get a lot of really nice days in the fall as well. So throw on a coat, throw on a sweatshirt, you're going to be just fine. Overall, throughout the course of the year, the temperature at the Oregon coast is pretty moderate. I mean, it's pretty mild. It's not going to swing too low. It's not going to swing too high. And so, as you start to move into, say, October through the fall into winter, it's going to start getting a lot wetter. It's going to start getting a lot darker, a lot cloudier. And again, for a lot of people, that's a big draw to the area. There's just kind of something in the air that you can feel in terms of having that experience, with that Oregon coast weather, with, the fog over the coastal range, and, kind of, just this, dramatic landscape, the kind of some of that winter weather can actually really enhance that experience overall. So storm watching is actually one of the biggest attractions at the Oregon coast. And as you get into winter, you'll start seeing some of those storms pick up, and you can get, windstorms coming through with wind that is blowing 65, 70, 75, maybe up to 80 miles an hour. And, luckily, you don't typically see a ton of damage to residences or businesses. It's more something that you can just kind of see from afar with trees swaying and things like that. A lot of, the kind of the geographical configurations up and down the coast, you have some protection kind of built in to a town where, a lot of these big geological structures up and down the coast will actually kind of, protect a lot of where the houses are and things like that. But, you do see down trees, you do see power lines getting taken out, those things do happen. So it's not incredibly dangerous. It's not something where you see a lot of damage necessarily year over year, but it can be pretty violent. And, that's probably why a lot of people go out to view these storms. Probably the biggest attraction in that regard are just these waves crashing up against the rocks, and coming up onto the beaches. It just, it makes for a very dramatic, very powerful thing to view and thing to experience. And so, it's definitely no surprise that that's something that people actually are drawn to, as opposed to something that pushes people away. Compared to other parts of the country, maybe say like a Florida, or the Gulf Coast, where, you have hurricanes coming in, people are having to evacuate. You're not seeing that kind of stuff in Oregon. So not a huge worry there. But again, overall winter, it's going to, it's going to be stormy at times. It's going to be wet. It's going to be raining the majority of the time. But, it's not going to be dropping down to freezing. Maybe, there might be a week stretch over the course of a year where you start to creep down into the 30s, where you have a cold front coming in, and, Western Oregon and the Cascades are, getting a lot of snow. You'll probably see snowfall every year. It's not going to stick. It's not going to stick around, maybe 1 to 3 inches a year on average. And so really, it's just kind of a cool sight to see. If you're looking for a place that has a lot of snow, the Oregon coast isn't going to be it, but you'll probably see a little snowfall every year here and there, just a little glimpse. So moving into the spring, it does tend to stay a little wet. Spring tends to be a little more unpredictable. That can actually create some really unique and some really cool, cloud cover, and, the way the weather changes so quickly. But it's gonna, typically stay pretty wet in the spring. Temperatures are going to start to creep up a little bit, maybe into the low 50s, things like that. And then as you move back into the summer, you'll start to see that mid 50s to mid 60s kind of on average in terms of daily temperatures, up until you get to mid to later summer, where you're pretty reliably in the 60s, mid 60s every day. And it's really pretty dry, pretty pleasant. So, kind of a broad overview there. The northern region of the Oregon coast and the central region of the Oregon coast tend to be pretty similar in terms of weather and kind of averages and what you can expect throughout the year. The southern third of the Oregon coast does tend to be just kind of a notch warmer. There's actually something, as you make your way further south, called the Chetco effect. We're coming off of the Chetco River, which comes out into Brookings, all the way down to the furthest southern part of the Oregon coast. You have some warm water blowing in from the east down the river, and that kind of creates this warmer climate than the rest of the Oregon coast. So again, you're going to get those wet, rainy days. There's going to be cloud cover. It's going to be pretty typical Oregon coastal weather up and down across the board, but if you're looking for something maybe just slightly warmer on average, kind of from Coos Bay down to, down to Bandon, down to Gold Beach, down into Brookings, that region is probably going to skew a little bit warmer on average, in particular, as you get into the spring, summer. So again, I mean, if you are seriously considering buying a house at the Oregon coast, whether you're relocating there full time or considering a vacation home, you probably have a pretty good idea of what to expect. Again, these aren't California beaches. This isn't laying on the beach, tanning all day, every day, 365. Although you will get some sunshine, you will get some nice weather in the warmer parts of the year. But either way, depending on where you're coming from, it could be a little bit of a shock. I've been going to the Oregon coast my entire life, and everybody I know has as well. And, it seems like really kind of throughout the year, in particular in the fall, winter, and spring, when you do see more clouds, more rain and cooler weather, just the idea of kind of being in your house, having these views, kind of being in this area that is so tranquil, so peaceful, so beautiful, and taking it all in, reading a book, drinking your coffee, tea, whatever it is, that's kind of really what people go to the Oregon coast for. And that's what really, people go there to experience. And so, as I was alluding to in the beginning of the video, there's just as much to do indoors as there is to do outdoors. And depending on the time of year, the weather is going to play into that, and play a big part of that. But, you want to go on a hike in December, no problem. Surfing in February, that's going to be just fine. So, don't let the weather scare you too much, but just know that, and again, especially depending on where you're coming from geographically, could be a little bit of a shock as far as how much rain you're going to see day to day, but that's part of what makes the Oregon coast so special. So if you are thinking about buying a house at the Oregon coast, make sure you give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or even schedule a Zoom call in the description below. However you decide to get a hold of us, we have your back when it comes to moving to the Oregon coast. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.